I'll start us off by introducing our speaker for today. Kathrin Augera started her training as a pediatric registered nurse in Switzerland in 1993, where she worked on the NICU at one of the leading university hospitals for several years. During her years on the NICU, she expanded her training in infant massage, baby wearing, reflexology, kinesthesia, which is conscious handing of the newborn, lactation, homeopathy, and flower essences, which broadened her expertise in the maternity field. Her work also included the supervision of pediatric nurses and midwife interns. Kathrin's years of conventional medical training fed her desire to step outside the typical medical model and go deeper into more personal care during the perinatal period. After her move to Los Angeles in 2002, she became a certified birth and postpartum doula as well as a postpartum doula trainer. Apart from holding many certifications, Kathrin is recognized as an expert in the postpartum field. Her passion about all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum knows no bounds, and she strongly believes in a culture where birth is just inclusive and free of fear, and where postpartum families get the support they need to thrive in their ever-changing landscape of the postpartum period. Kathrin is currently lives with her husband and their 2 teenage sons in Los Angeles. Please help me welcome Kathrin Augera.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. As you can tell, I have an accent, and I am from Switzerland, like Jennifer just said. I'm super excited to be here with all of you today. I come to you from a perspective as a postpartum doula and postpartum doula trainer. I do not come to you as an expert or as a sleep scientist or any kind of medical training with what I'm about to present to you. And what I like very much is I'm going to start out with a PowerPoint presentation, but I don't want to kill you with the PowerPoint presentation for the next 90 minutes. I want to give you some statistics and kind of lay the foundation and hope that for the bigger part of our meeting today that we can have a conversation and see how do you apply this information that I'm giving you into your daily work going into people's homes. Therefore, questions that come up, I would appreciate if you either could put them into Q&A or into the chat, and Jennifer will keep an eye on them, and we will then go over your questions once we're in the conversation part of our presentation today. So thank you so much. I'm aware that I have an accent and that some people might have a harder time understanding me. So I use the PowerPoints also to kind of help the ones that might have a harder time with my accent. I'm going to go into screen share. And I have been told that when I concentrate that I look angry. Everyone, because this camera is straight in my face, I hope you know that I don't tend to be an angry person. It's just that I'm concentrating really hard, okay? So let me share this with you. Could you please all make sure that you are muted? If you haven't done so already, please. And if you can, turn on your camera if that feels safe to you. Okay, one more.
Kathrin, you're muted.
Well, that might help. Okay, thank you. Jennifer, can you see the first slide of my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm coming from a place of safety in infant sleep and its cultural consideration from a doula's perspective, okay? And I want to start out with, okay, what does that even mean? What do we do as doulas? We have several different kinds of doulas. I'm going to go with the two main doulas and tell you a little bit about what do we do as doulas. So we have birth doulas. A birth doula provides emotional, physical support and suggests comfort measures and provide support and suggestions for the partner. The doula does not do any clinical or medical tasks, and the doula provides non-medical support solely. The doula meets with the client 2 to 3 times prenatally, where the doula prepares them for the birth of their baby. And once the client, that's what we call our families that we work for, they are clients. So once our clients go into labor, we meet with them either in their home or at the hospital. And we start our services and we stay with them continuously until about 1 to 2 hours after the birth of the baby. We will then say our goodbyes and meet with them 1 or 2 times postpartum in their home to review the birth and answer any questions they might have that are birth related. That's the work of a birth doula. A postpartum doula is different. The postpartum doula offers evidence-based information and gives emotional, physical, and educational support solely. The doula cares for the parents and the family in the home in the first few weeks following the birth. So the postpartum doula starts when the baby has been born. Again, postpartum doulas do not do anything clinical or medical and provide non-medical support solely. And we meet with them maybe once prenatally to prepare them for the postpartum period. And after the baby is born, we meet the client in their home to start our services. And ideally, our services would be provided for about 6 to 8 weeks postpartum. So since the topic for today is the postpartum period, I'm going to give you a little bit more information about what we do as postpartum doulas. So the postpartum doula, we are not a nanny or a babysitter. Nannies and babysitters take over childcare. Postpartum doulas do not. We are an educator in that home. We educate about infant care, sleep, diapering, bathing, maybe baby carriers. We educate about normal newborn behavior, like that babies wake up at night and that babies use crying as a form of communication, right? Or we educate on how far can babies see right after birth, things like that. Infant feeding is a very big component of postpartum care, be that through breast chest feeding or bottle feeding. And we also help with that emotional transition and screen for what we call our perinatal mental health disorders. We assist with the physical recovery from childbirth, from pregnancy and childbirth. For example, our clients might have an episiotomy or a tear or a surgical birth, and we help with recovery within scope of a postpartum doula. So again, that doesn't include anything medical or clinical. We also make a lot of referrals, creating that village that helps them raise their child. At times, we might prepare small meals. Some doulas specialize in meal preparation. They have a very busy doula practice. Others prepare more smaller meals, but we make sure that all family members are eating. And we do some baby laundry and run some errands. So that's the work of a postpartum doula. So since we give evidence-based information, that's where I want to give all of you some evidence-based information. And that will all be sleep-related according to our topic today. So we're first going to look into SUID. SUID stands for sudden, unexpected infant death. And we know that each year we have about 3,400 sudden unexpected infant deaths in the United States. So I want to clarify some terminology. A newborn is up to 6 weeks old. An infant is up to 1 year old. So when we're talking about infant deaths, that means that these babies never turned 1. So when we talk about SUID, these deaths occur among infants less than 1 year old and have no immediate or obvious cause. And we have 3 common reported SUID kind of types of deaths. One of them is SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. We have unknown causes, and we also have accidental suffocation and strangulation in bed. So when we're looking at these numbers, 3,400 deaths per year, these numbers are about the same since the year 2000. And that number is per 100,000 live births. So every 100,000 live births per year, we have about 3,400 deaths in that year, which means when we're looking at these numbers, we have about 10 babies that died yesterday in the United States of SUID. And by the end of today, we will have another 10 babies that will die today. And tomorrow it will be another 10 babies. When we're looking at these numbers, I also want to kind of initially I thought, really, we're not doing any better in 23 years. We're about the same numbers with 3,400. But when we're thinking about the babies that are born per year, we're having more babies born and the same amount of SUIDs. So therefore, the numbers actually are going down slowly. I personally think they should be way lower with all the studies that have been done, but that's where we are currently. So I kind of want to look at what does this mean with how did these babies die and what is the percentage of that? So I like these charts because I'm a visual person. Some of you might be visuals as well. So here we can see that SIDS is about 41%. And accidental suffocation and strangulation is about 32%. And unknown causes is about 27%. So SIDS does take the biggest piece of our pie. And I will talk about SIDS in just a little bit in more details, because I think that's where our work really comes in and where we have the biggest impact. And I want to kind of talk about this trend that I just mentioned. So this is over a 30-year span that we're looking at. And the combined SUID rate is the one here at the very top. So you can see in 1990, we were quite high and it has come quite lower. But again, with all the research that has been done, this is still not dropping. However, SIDS rate is that blue line, and that one is dropping. It's going up a little bit here at the end, but nonetheless, it actually does keep dropping. Unknown causes is the orange line. That is more or less the same. And accidental suffocation and strangulation in bed is the green line at the bottom, is slowly going up, but still rather linear if we compare it to SIDS. The next slide, this one, is looking at SWEETS rates by state. And now we're looking at a 4-year time frame. This is the newest studies that I was able to find online. The last 3 years since 2020 are not yet available online. So here we see that in California, we want to have the lightest color possible in all states. And in California, we're doing pretty good. I'm personally happy about that. Again, I think there's room for improvement. I'm happy we're not in the darker colors. This slide here is SWEET rates by race. Again, same 4-year-old time frame. And we are looking at per 100,000 live births. So the biggest numbers here we have with American Indian or Alaska Native babies. This one is Black babies. And we have Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders. So these would all be considered babies of color, right? Here are white babies. Hispanic or brown babies, right? And then we have Asian babies is currently the lowest number. So let's think about when we look at these. 2020, we went into a global pandemic with a shutdown. And what happened during the global pandemic is Asian hate. Asian hate has led to a lot of racism towards Asian people. So I wonder if the numbers for Asian babies will change once these studies come out, especially since we have come out of the pandemic. So these last 3 years, I'm personally actually really curious if or how these numbers will be changing. So what are some of these risk factors? Ultimately, why exactly are these babies dying? When it comes to SIDS, to this day, we don't exactly know why babies are dying of crib death. So again, with all these studies that have been done in the past 20 plus years, we don't really know why it's still happening or what causes it, which makes it difficult when it comes to prevention. So we have different risk factors. When we're looking at the reporting that has been done, we know that more than 1 in 5 parents with a recent live birth placed their infant in a non-supine sleep position. So they had a baby that died of SWEET, and their baby was either on their side or on their stomach, meaning not in a back to sleep position, sleeping on their back. More than 1 in 3 parents used at least one type of soft bedding. So imagine that baby is on the stomach or maybe on the side, and the type of bedding is soft. And we also know that nearly 2 in 3 parents reported bed sharing with their infant. So there's 3 places where babies are sleeping. Bed sharing means the baby is in bed with the parent. Co-sleeping means the baby is adjacent to the parent's bed in a bassinet or co-sleeper. And then we have crib sleeping. The baby sleeps in the crib, either in the parent's bedroom or in another room, the nursery, the living room. So we have bed sharing, co-sleeping, or crib sleeping. And here, again, that last bullet point says nearly 2 in 3 parents reported bed sharing with their infant. So again, a pie chart of how what is the percentage of these three. Bed sharing is 50% when it comes to risk factors. It's a very, very high risk factor. And that's where I want to later talk about culture, because where these babies are sleeping is so very cultural. It might be very easy in theory to tell parents you should not sleep with your baby, right? But how many of us have children and have slept at least one night in our lives with the baby in our bed? And what does that mean with us being care providers in those homes? And what's that conversation that we need to have? 32%, still 1/3 of babies slept in a soft bed, right? Or some sort of soft bedding. And then the position of the baby is about 18%. So for me as a postpartum doula, I need to know about what are the current recommendations in reducing SWED and promoting safe sleep. That is important because I need to know what does the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, what do they recommend? Because the AAP will make recommendations to the pediatricians, and to the pediatricians in return make the recommendations to the families that we serve. So I looked up, what does the AAP recommend, right? Because as doulas and as home health providers, you need to know. So the AAP recommends supine sleep position, back to sleep. Babies should be sleeping on their back, on the firm sleep surface, flat, not a hammock, level, not on an angle, not inclined, and covered only with a fitted sheet, no loose bedding. Okay, now think about how many of you think about a baby that is swaddled, okay? That baby is warm. So think about you being swaddled, arms down. You're warm, but you don't have a pillow, don't have a blanket, and you're lying flat on your back. If you think about how many of us sleep like that, if I asked all of you, how many of you sleep like that, and I asked you to show your hand, I'm pretty sure there will be no hands in the screen, right? But we recommend that sleep position to a baby that has been in a fetal positioning, cuddled and rocked and in a warm place, right? That's where the tricky part is. That might be sounding very safe in theory, but how many of our people in that home are actually not having baby in that position? So what other options do we have? And what does the AAP recommend? They recommend that room sharing without bed sharing for at least the first 6 months, that baby sleeps in a room with another adult in that room. Because we know that if that baby's breathing or heart rate slows down, and there's a parent that is snoring or moving or grunting or doing any of these sounds, loudly breathing, that baby will pick up breathing pattern of that adult. It does not have to be a parent, preferably a parent, but it doesn't have to be a parent. So room sharing without bed sharing for at least 6 months, and that I find very significant to all of you when I think about the different times you're visiting these families, right? If you do your 4-month visit, double check, where is that baby sleeping? Is that baby still in a room with another adult? How about the 6-month visit, right? We know it would be very beneficial to have a sleep environment free of objects, stuffed animals, blankets, toys. That is a little bit more well known, but again, it's something that we need to double check because again, 18% of babies were in soft bedding, right? And sleep positions. The avoidance of pre- and post-nasal exposure of tobacco smoke. First-hand smoke, second-hand smoke, it means it's on clothing, right? Are these people maybe smoking outside with a smoke jacket that they can take off? Third-hand smoke is being in a building that shares a ventilation system, where somebody in that building is smoking, maybe in an apartment 2 stories down, and that air goes into all the different apartments in that building. So that will be considered third-hand smoke. So it's recommended for no smoke exposure prenatally and postnatal. The AAP has some more recommendation. To feed the baby human milk is recommended over formula. And again, that's a tall order. What I'm coming from is optimal, or I usually call it reaching for the stars. If we reach for the stars, what would be the best possible position for this baby to be sleeping in? And then what actually happens in those homes? How do we apply these optimal situations, right? So preferably human milk over formula. But again, resources. We know through evidence-based information that the most common reason people don't breast chest feed their babies is because of lack of support and information. Jennifer, could you please put in the chat the Breastfeeding Task Force of Los Angeles, of Greater Los Angeles, Breastfeeding Task Force of Greater Los Angeles. Their website is www.breastfeedla.org. Through that website, you can find lactation support according to your client's zip code. And if your client speaks Spanish or Japanese, you will find lactation consultants through that website that speak Spanish or Japanese or American Sign Language. It's a fantastic resource for all of us to have available. No drugs or alcohol misuse will be greatly recommended. As postpartum doulas, it's a little bit different to you, I assume. As postpartum doulas, we are not mandated reporters. So we might see different things than somebody does who is a mandated reporter. It's nonetheless quite rare to get hired as a postpartum doula with somebody who is misusing street drugs or illegal drugs. But nonetheless, that would be highly recommended to not use any alcohol or street drugs. We also want to avoid a baby getting too hot. And it is recommended to keep a baby's head uncovered. Really important. How many babies are still wearing hats, right? While I think there is a balance with that, babies in the beginning cannot always regulate their temperature so well. So they lose 1/3 of their body heat over their head. In some cases, wearing a hat is extremely important, but I sometimes see babies that are maybe 4 or 6 months old where they're still swaddled very deeply in blankets and are still wearing a hat. And again, I think we need to think about, are we talking a newborn or are we talking about an infant, a baby that is several months old? Regular well baby visits at the pediatricians are highly recommended. That is also interesting because in a perfect world, optimization, right? Reaching for the stars. I would love for my clients to have a great relationship with their pediatrician. But the question is, how safe do these people feel going to a doctor? Are they afraid that they might be called Child Protective Services on them, right? And what impact does this have on all of us and the work that we do and the recommendations that we're giving these people in their home? The AAP recommends to avoid using heart or breathing or motion monitors, which when I first heard about that was really interesting, because there was suddenly a trend where everybody started buying these owlets or all these different monitors. But the AAP ultimately actually does not recommend the use of them because of false alerts and because they are not very reliable. I wonder if I'm more confusing than anything else right now with this info that I'm giving you. So I want to look at how do we apply this information. There's a great website out there called Basis Online, and they have pictures that we are all allowed to use free of charge. They give permission. So here you see that link, that website in this picture. So these are some pictures that I took from their website about bed sharing positions, knowing that bed sharing is not recommended when it comes to SIDS, and in turn, knowing that probably most people sleep at least once with their baby in bed. So why not acknowledge that and give them safe sleep environments, right? And these pictures might help some of you or some of your clients. So here we see a couple. This is with one person, one parent, and also an infant feeding environment. Here in this picture to the left, you can beautifully see that co-sleeping. And that also bears the question, where do your families live? Are they couch surfing with somebody? Do they have the financial ability to get a bassinet? This bassinet here looks beautiful, doesn't look cheap, right? Here again with one parent, again a feeding position. That picture to your left is called a C sleeping position because that parent is kind of curled around the baby like the letter C. And then to your right again with no blankets close to baby's face or no pillows close to baby's face. Again, optimal sleep positions. That's what we're currently looking at. So what we need to think about is what is the conversation that is happening in that home? There has to be a respectful dialogue. I love asking questions, a lot of questions. Culturally or traditionally, where would you like for your babies to sleep? Are any of you getting any sleep with your current sleep environment? What are currently struggles that you're having at night, or what comes up for you? Any concerns, any questions do you have with maybe bed sharing or close co-sleeping with your baby? We need to include families in that decision-making process, because if we just go in and tell them what to do in a one-time visit and leave again, they're not going to do it if they're not part of that decision-making process. And ultimately follow up and potentially adjust. We all know that babies go through a sleep rhythm change around 4 months old. That's usually when you all do another visit. So in that 4 months visit, I highly recommend that you check in about sleep safe sleep environments. We also need to customize sleep information, give more culturally specific resources, maybe include some pictures and verbiage that is culturally considerate of them. And also that we include inclusivity in many ways. Just when we're thinking about pictures and verbiage, think about using pictures that maybe doesn't just have a heterosexual cisgender white couple, right? So where do you find pictures that has maybe same-sex couples or single parents that you can show them? And ultimately, I also think when it comes to cultural specific resources, where are these grandparents of these babies? What are their opinions of where babies should be sleeping? Are they there while you're in that home in the visit, and can you include them in that conversation? Because we kind of all have probably some experience with mother-in-laws, and some of them being rather strong-minded, right? The matriarch in that home. Resources also with cultural friendly products, bedding, sleep arrangements, and also ultimately financial abilities. Some of you might have heard of the N.E.A.R. The N.E.A.R is this fancy bed that costs over $1,000. I don't know how helpful the N.E.A.R is. I don't know if I would recommend it, right? And it's a very big expense. I don't know how well babies are sleeping in a N.E.A.R, right? So before I go into more of our conversation side of things, I want to have you just a quick slide about my contact information so that you have that available. My website is Los Angeles Doula. And that's where you also find me on Instagram as Los Angeles Doula.